me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, Wackos. Hello from Union, New Jersey. Wow, I am in my childhood home. This is the den. We're here. We're live. Alfred is behind me. I have all my family photos. My dad's even here. You know, his ashes are behind me. His ashes are always present on the show, though, because they're next to me when I'm doing the show from my house. Obviously, we all have a piece divvied up. It's a democracy in the Fisher household. Thank you so much for being here, and extra special thanks to Mike, who is on vacation and still working like the true patriot he is. And yeah, I'm in New Jersey. Got to do some family stuff this week, but it is America's 250th birthday. So obviously we weren't going to take off this week. It's a celebration. We're doing a bit of a different special episode this week. I spent the past 48 hours or so curating some, without a country version of a history lesson. I have some of the best moments from the past 250 years, some of the worst moments, things that you might not know. We're going to go over a lot of SCOTUS rulings that they like to save and right before they go on summer vacation, so they don't really have to feel the heat of their decisions and and they can be in the Hamptons or someplace probably much nicer while the rest of America is falling apart and actually facing repercussions because of their decisions. And I also asked you guys, the Wackos, and not necessarily all Wackos, but just people who follow me, your favorite and least favorite things about America. And as always, I do remind you that I feel like the American flag really has been taken over by people with ideas that 50%, if not more, of the country don't agree with. And it makes me really sad when I see people like cringe or scowl at the sight of the American flag. I proudly have American flag pants, shirts. Obviously, I got these glasses at Stop and Shop in Union, New Jersey, because I knew they would have a seasonal aisle, because every good supermarket has a seasonal aisle. And this, I think sometimes, in my friend group, we all we're all in charge of one holiday, right? And I have an outdoor space in New York, which is, hashtag blessed. It's for Alfred. But so I'm always in charge of doing 4th of July. This year, I'm not going to be doing a 4th of July party because I'm taking care of my mom. But usually I do. And I think when I post the pictures online, a lot of my followers, especially because they're so far left, I think sometimes think a certain way about me celebrating the 4th of July, having a big party that isn't some kind of ironic fuck you celebration where we all, punch or blow up Donald Trump or, beat a Donald Trump, what is the pinata with a bat, and I have done those things. I did have a Donald Trump pinata many birthday parties ago, but first of all, I think that while we need to keep reacting to things that Donald Trump does, like reacting like with legislation and protests and things like that, not just like by crying and drinking wine in a bathtub. I also, recognize that the United States is so much more than Donald Trump. And right now it seems overwhelming, like he's like it is the United States of Donald Trump. But I don't want to keep feeling like that. And I don't want to give him more attention than he needs. He does thrive on attention. And I like to remember all the great things about America. And furthermore, I never want to lose the motivation or enthusiasm that I have to make America a better place. And I really do feel that even though there's a lot of people with twisted and racist and misogynistic and xenophobic ideas in America, I think there's also a lot of really interesting people. There's a lot of people who are going to change the future, whether it be through their art, through their parenting, through their technological, advancements, through medicine. Like there's just this really is a place of opportunity. And if we thought that a land of opportunity was going to be created and no one was going to come in and try to fuck that up, for lack of a better word, we were sorely mistaken. The best things in life, the most meaningful things in life, people will try to destroy. People will try to hoard it all for themselves. And, I think it only enhances the value of something if you have to fight for it and all the freedoms and rights that I think we've taken for granted in previous years. So that's my feelings on it. That's why I still proudly celebrate the 4th of July with my friends. And I have, a lot of friends from other countries, especially, you guys know, I have like a huge group of fairly new Canadian immigrant friends, fairly new, not as friends, but fairly new to the United States. And, I truly felt like privileged to celebrate their first 4th of July with them and host them at my home for their first 4th of July. And I know that they, everyone kind of jokes about like, I'm moving to Canada if things don't work out right. But all of my Canadian friends say that they prefer living in America rather than in Canada, because it's allowed them to pursue their dreams in a way that they weren't able to in their home country, and reach a level of, fame or reach a certain level of status in the public eye that they weren't able to do outside of the country. So yeah, so I'm wearing these glasses. I mean, these glasses are sick too, and it's like they knew I needed to do without a country in them, because I didn't poke the frames out. There just are no frames in it, so it's perfect. Like, this is just, I don't know, if I start getting a migraine, I'll take them off. But I mean, this is cute as heck. I'm so excited. And I'm so excited to share the show with you. Again, this is Without a Country. We talk about the news from the perspective of the right and the left, and we find some truth in the middle. We focus a lot on critical thinking and making sure not to spread information. It only takes a couple minutes to fact check information before you share it, and you are doing such a service to your brothers and your sisters in the US and abroad if you fact check before spreading misinformation. And obviously in the age of AI and just like so much misinformation, we're all going to accidentally do it from time to time. We don't need to beat each other up about it. Just point it out. When I see something that I have already fact checked, especially when it's on a bigger account, I just like try to be really kind about it. Be like, hey, I actually did some research on this. This isn't true, and this is why, and this is my source. You don't need to be like, you're a fucking idiot. I can't believe you have a degree. I can't believe you're allowed outside your home. Like, that's not going to be the change you wish to see in the world, right? I think citing your source, or when you see something that you're not sure if it's true, and you can't find the source of it, just asking someone to cite their source, I think, is, like, as we've talked about on this show, like a really calm, respectful, but direct way of being like, we can't just say anything that we want when it comes to information. Obviously, we can kind of say whatever we want because we live in America, but that might get taken away soon. But anyway, if you're just joining us, my name is Corinne Fisher. I'm a stand-up comedian, a podcaster, and a former New York City 2025 mayoral candidate. So let's get into the show. I've been doing a lot of reading because I am in suburbia and I have a beautiful big backyard to, sit with my dog and enjoy. And so I've been really plowing through these. I know it seems like I've been reading these 2 books forever, and I have. You guys know I read like 3 books at a time, and very slowly at that. but I really savor the information and I take it in. So these are the two books that I'm still reading. I'll also take like sometimes like 2 months off from like reading and just read articles. But so I'm reading, still finishing. I'm in the middle of both, and I am using tissues as bookmarks and birth control actually. So Lena Dunham, and I was not expecting this because this is kind of my fun read, and then this is my educational read, right? Even though this is kind of educational too, because for me, as someone in the public eye, because it really teaches you like how to, in the same way So You've Been Publicly Shamed teaches you how to navigate being in the public eye. I think this book does too, if you're interested in it. And it's a lot of the bad side. But I was not expecting this from Lena Dunham, but she's talking about after she was finished shooting girls, right? And the first thing she did after shooting girls was she campaigned for Hillary Clinton. And I kind of knew that in the back of my head, but I forgot the timeline there. And that was the first thing she did. And she became very politically engaged, albeit mostly online, which she talks about herself. And this is a little passage that she wrote that I just really, really think speaks to a lot of things that we talk about on this show. She writes, "I know that once Trump was elected, I continued to fight as if it were a job I'd been assigned, as if I were some kind of elected general in a feminist military. No matter that the majority of this fighting happened on Instagram in the form of disjointed prose poetry about abstract ideas of autonomy or occasionally in a pussy hat. I know that people who loved me asked me why I couldn't seem to lay the sword down, and that I didn't have a very good answer, that I often spoke in full paragraphs that employed the cadence of activism, but were someone to really attempt to investigate amounted to a weak mule of justice for me." And I really, really love that paragraph. I think Lena Dunham is a beautiful writer, and I think that paragraph really touches on so many problems that I have with the left, and with so many issues I have with, as you guys know, I talk about all the time, basically like Instagram politics or Instagram activism. I've been talking about this for a long time. I remember even when we did Guys We Fest, which was like 2017, 2018, I think. I remember talking about that because, there was a lot of basis in like volunteer work and nonprofits at Guys We Fest. And I just think she really summed it up so succinctly and so beautifully and in such a self-aware way that we've all had to take notes of. There's certainly been times when I've been, super active online, and then I'm like looking and I'm like, okay, I'm doing this from like the comfort of my Manhattan apartment. I don't even have roommates. I'm not even wearing underwear, and that's kind of why when I made an Instagram story, saying that if Donald Trump won the presidency again, that I was going to run for office. And I truly don't even know if I was wearing a shirt in that Instagram story. Cause a lot of times I'm like Instagram storying from bed with like the sheets over me. And anyway, and it wasn't like to be like, look at me. But I think like if I hadn't run, that would have certainly been like, look at me. So it's just a reminder. And I've had to remind myself this hundreds and hundreds of times over the years, especially because sometimes those of us with blue check marks that aren't paid for, the ones that we were given by Instagram, sometimes the blue check mark, you really think that you're doing a lot more than you are. People always saying, use your platform. You can start by using your platform and then get your ass up and do something in the real world, because you'll feel better. You'll be less angry. You'll spend less time fighting with other people who have time to be on Instagram, who are not people who really need your help to begin with. And you can go out into the world and take the temperature of, your fellow Americans, or no matter where you are. This can be applicable anywhere. Obviously, we're just doing an America 250 episode, so it's going to be very America centric today. And just when you make a post, really think, is this because I think it's going to really reach people, really change people's opinions, or is this just a way of promoting what a good person I am? Or, kind of justice for me reminded me so much of Spencer Pratt's campaign, because while I think the left sometimes is more it's more of a left problem, this paragraph that she talks about. I think it is applicable, for independents and Republicans as well. It's like, are we only stepping up when we personally feel that we have been hurt and need justice, or are we stepping up when we see injustices anywhere? And I really loved that passage. And then the second interesting thing I read this week was from, another great, I highly recommend both these books, obviously much different reads, but Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. I've been constantly talking about little things I've read in here. And, another thing we've talked about a lot on this show is that, because people are so America centric, and the right and left are both America centric in their own ways, right? So the right is America centric in like, fuck yeah, America, no one's better than us. And the left looks down on that mentality. But the left is also America-centric when you really look into it, because they take it upon themselves to be like, fuck America, no place is worse than America. We are the enemy of all countries. We are the worst country. And that's still America-centric because it's not true. Plenty of countries are experiencing the same, the same downs that we are. And this passage, in about a dictatorship in Brazil, talks a lot about that. And I got to figure out where this starts. But yeah, so it's about this President Bolsonaro. I should have looked up the pronunciation, but I didn't. And so, he's talking about the Brazilian attitude towards the poor. I think this is So it says, the author goes, I saw a vision of where this could take us, like stuff that's happening with Donald Trump, when in 2018, I went to Brazil in the run-up to their presidential election, in part to see my friend Raul Santiago, a remarkable young man I got to know when I was writing the Brazilian edition of my book about the war on drugs, Chasing the Scream. Raul grew up in a place named Complexo do Alemão. Sorry, I didn't take Spanish, just bad. Which is one of the biggest and poorest favelas in Rio. It's a huge, jagged ziggurat of concrete and tin and wire that stretches far up on the hills, way above the city, until it seems to be almost in the clouds. At least 200,000 people live there in narrow concrete alleyways that are crisscrossed with makeshift wires providing electricity. The people here built this whole world brick by brick with little support from the state. The alleyways of Alemão are surreally beautiful. They look like Naples after some undefined apocalypse. As a child, Raul would fly kites high above the favela with his best friend Fabio, where they could see out all across Rio toward the ocean and the statue of Christ the Redeemer. Often the authorities would send tanks rolling into the favela. The attitude of the Brazilian state toward the poor was to keep them suppressed with periodic threats of extreme violence. Raul and Fabio would regularly see bodies in the alleyways. Everyone in Alemão knew that the cops could shoot poor kids and claim they were drug dealers and plant drugs or guns on them. In practice, the police had a license to murder the poor. Fabio, and so obviously right there, what are we thinking of, when we're comparing to the United States? Like, are people not doing that to Black low-income individuals all the time? Yeah, of course. People meaning the cops. Fabio always seemed like the kid most likely to get away from all of this. He was great at math and determined to earn money for his mother and disabled sister. He was always figuring out deals. He persuaded the local bars to let him buy their bottles so he could sell them in bulk, for example. But then one day, Raul was told something terrible. Fabio had, like so many kids before him, been shot dead by the police. He was 15 years old. Raul decided he couldn't just watch his friends being killed one by one. So as the years passed, he decided to do something bold. He set up a Facebook page. And this part is very important because when we talk about this notion of what can I do? I feel so helpless. What can I do? Little things can have big repercussions, both positively and negatively, but in this case, positively, right? So he set up a Facebook page named Coletivo Papo Reto, which gathered cell phone footage from across Brazil of the police killing innocent people and planting drugs or guns on them. it became huge. There are videos regularly going viral, and it's basically he just created a database so that people could become independent journalists when they knew something unfair, unjust, criminal, hateful was happening. And they said, there is a way for the people to be stronger than the authorities. Even some people who had defended the police began to see their real behavior and oppose it. And that was the beauty of this, pre-AI world. Everyone was like, well, if I see it, it must be true. It was an inspiring story about how the internet made it possible for people who have been treated like third-class citizens to find a voice and to mobilize and fight back. But at the same time, as the web was having the positive effect, the social media algorithms were having the opposite effect. They were supercharging anti-democratic forces in Brazil. A former military officer named Jair Bolsonaro had been a marginal figure for years. He was outside the mainstream because he kept saying vile things and attacking large parts of the population in extreme ways. He praised people who had carried out torture against innocent people when Brazil was a dictatorship. He told his female colleagues in the Senate that they were so ugly, he wouldn't bother raping them. I mean, just, Donald Trump of Brazil over here, or maybe, Donald Trump is the Bolsonaro of America, and that they weren't worthy of it. He said he would rather learn his son was dead than learn his son was gay. Then YouTube and Facebook became one of the main ways people in Brazil got their news, right? Not just us. Their algorithms prioritized angry, outrageous content, and Bolsonaro's reach dramatically surged. He became a social media star. And, obviously this book is specifically about technology, right? So it's talking about how, the algorithms learned that humans respond more to things that make them angry than things that make them happy or things that educate them. And it's talking about how that kind of technology can have extreme real world repercussions, such as in this case, and such as in the case of Donald Trump, right? He ran for president openly attacking people like the residents of Alameo, saying the country's poorer, blacker citizens are not even good for breeding. That's a direct quote, and should, quote, go back to the zoo. He promised to give the police even more power to launch intensified military attacks on the favelas, a license for wholesale slaughter, right? It's giving ICE, right? Here was a society with huge problems that urgently needed to be solved, but social media algorithms were promoting far-right wingers and wild disinformation. In the run-up to the election, in favelas like Alameo, many people were deeply worried about a story that had been circulating online. Supporters of Bolsonaro had created a video warning that his main rival, Fernando Haddad, wanted to turn all the children of Brazil into homosexuals. So, I mean, this is, very much like, when they said Kamala was going to pay for people in prison to transition, like very similar storyline here. No story has not been told a million times, and that had developed he had developed a cunning technique to do it. The video showed a baby sucking a bottle, only there was something peculiar about it. The teat of the bottle had been painted to look like a penis. This, the story that circulated said, is what Haddad will distribute to every kindergarten in Brazil. This became one of the most shared news stories in the entire election. People in the favelas explained indignantly that they couldn't possibly vote for somebody who wanted to get babies to suck these penis teats. And so they would have to vote for Bolsonaro instead. So the very people that we know this person's going to prey on, because of, I think there, definitely obviously is like a lack of education, and, you have less access many times to education when you have less money, and that's on purpose. On these algorithm pumped absurdities, the fate of the whole country turned. When Bolsonaro unexpectedly won the presidency, his supporters chanted, "Facebook, Facebook, Facebook." They knew what the algorithms had done for them. There were, of course, many other factors at work in Brazilian society. This is only one, but it is one Bolsonaro's gleeful followers picked out first. Not long afterward, Raul was in his home in Alameo when he heard a noise that sounded like an explosion. He ran outside and saw that a helicopter was hovering above the favela and firing down at the people below, precisely the kind of violence Bolsonaro had pledged to carry out. Raul screamed for his kids to hide, terrified. When I spoke to Raul on Skype later, he was more shaken than I had seen him before. As I write, the violence is being ramped up more and more. And I mean, this book was published in 2022, I believe is the copyright on here. So, just to put a pin on that, in that. And yeah, those are just two things that I read this week that I thought were really perfect for this show and really speak to a lot of the themes that we talk about on this show. Sorry, I didn't see that. Bolsonaro. That's how they're really that. I can't. We know the rule on this show. I can't trust your pronunciation. Bolsonaro. That doesn't. Oh, you Googled that? Okay, and then I trust it. Bolsonaro. I would have never gotten that, but the S, I guess, makes it like a Z sound in Spanish, or would it be Portuguese because they are? Is it Portuguese because they're in Brazil? Yeah. Very similar. My best friend is 100% Portuguese, and she said that it's okay to say that the languages are similar. So no hate mail, please. All right, so that's what I read. Very interesting stuff, and I just love when kind of things that I'm reading in books really relate to conversations that I'm having in real life with you guys. Moving on to Enemy of the State this week. So I've been watching some documentaries with my mom that I hadn't had time to watch at my apartment, and we decided to watch The Perfect Neighbor. I had heard that it was a good film. It was Academy Award nominated. I don't know if you watched this on Netflix, Mike. Yeah, it's Portuguese. Yeah. Okay. That's why it's making the Z sound. So Mike, walk away because I'm about to spoil it, and spoiler alert for anyone else. But the Enemy of the State this week is Susan, who is quote unquote the perfect neighbor from The Perfect Neighbor. And obviously she self-identifies as the perfect neighbor. This is, I don't even like this term, but she really, personifies what a Karen is. She is if you looked up Karen in the dictionary, you would see this woman, Susan, from The Perfect Neighbor. And she lives in a suburb in Florida, and in an apartment complex, not a complex, but like a little. It almost looks like a little bungalows, like the bungalow style apartments that they have like in Los Angeles. We don't have them in New York, but like a bungalow style apartment in. So nothing above her, but like kind of like a little thing next to her. But she has her own little like a patio property and stuff. And there's a bunch of kids. Black, white, but definitely a good amount of Black kids. And that is important in this scenario or in this story. And she's constantly calling the cops on them. They're too noisy. They're playing, the football gets, on her property. A roller skate gets on her property. And she's always like very seemingly even keeled when the cops come. But you can tell by the accounts of the neighborhood children and the neighborhood parents that this woman is a menace. And it's always all of their words against her. No one else is ever on Susan's side when the cops come. And the cops come a lot over the course of, these, it's about 2 years, I would say, that she's like calling the cops. And, these kids are like 11, 12 years old. And it's just, I know it sounds like old of me, but it's just like honestly so nice in this documentary to see little kids actually playing outside, like 10, 11, 12-year-olds playing outside. They're scooting. They're combing their Barbie doll's hair. They're playing football with each other. They have a dog that they play with a lot. It's like really nice to see people enjoy. That was one of my favorite parts of growing up in suburbia. I had a bunch of kids who all lived around me, and we would go out and people would ring my doorbell and be like, "Can Corinne come out to play?" And that was one of my favorite parts of childhood. It was so great. We played hide and seek and everything. And so she's constantly calling the cops. And one day and the cops are like, they always come and they seem to like believe the children and the children's parents. They kind of like know that Susan's just like this like older woman, white woman who is like cranky and just hates children, right? So they seem to acknowledge that, but they don't like, they don't ever say like, hey, Susan, stop calling us. There's not a problem here. They're not doing anything illegal. They're not on your property. Your property is very limited. Like, they speak to the landlord and everything. And, you know, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything that's illegal or even in the realm of, you know, being illegal. And the cops kind of just tell the kids like, yo, you know, you're not doing anything wrong. I know you're just being kids, but they're like, just stay away from Susan. She's like an old cranky lady. And like, you just don't want the headache. Right. So one day it escalates to Susan claims that like roller skates like ended up like on her property from one of the kids, and she like seemingly throws them. There's always stories of like them throwing stuff at each other, like throwing a sign, throwing roller skates, and both sides are always like, I didn't throw that, like I threw it in their direction, but I didn't throw it at them. And so it's always a, you know, he said, she said thing, mostly a she said, because most of the adults involved are women. And then she somehow something happens where one of the kids has his like a tablet, like his like a iPad or tablet out, and it gets on her property or something, and she like takes it inside or throws it or does something. She does something with some kid's tablet that, and because this is all done with body cam footage, so sometimes it's like a little unclear exactly what happened. And she takes it, and then the little kid, and this is like a real little kid, he's like not more than 10. He goes and tells his mother that, you know, Susan was messing with him. Susan messed with his tablet. And I think like took it maybe, because that's why the mom really got very angry about it. And this particular child is Black, and this particular mom is Black. And so the mom goes over and starts banging on Susan's door, like, you know, give me my, you know, kid, stop messing with my kid. Come out here. I need to talk to you. And Susan claims that the mom at the door is saying, I'm going to kill you. But no eyewitnesses can verify that. And yeah, it seems like that is made up because Susan's story changes a bit. And Susan, during this altercation, she calls the cops, as she does every time. And then she goes and gets her gun, and reminder, Florida is a stand your ground state, and she shoots through the door. Like it's a metal door that you can't see through. There's no pane, so you can't even see where you're aiming, and just shoots through the door. And she shoots this mother of four to the ground. Everyone freaks out. All the kids see it. It's crazy. And they first describe it as she gets like shot in like the shoulder, right? So we're all hoping for the best. The kids are traumatized, they're screaming, you know. Cops show up first. EMT shows up shortly after. They take her out. The kids are freaking out. Of course, the kid with the tablet, you know, feels so guilty. Like he sends his mom to stand up to this woman. His mom ends up getting shot. He's devastating. He's bawling. And Susan comes out finally, and very casually, she just shot someone through a door. She's very casual about it. She ultimately gets detained, not arrested, but detained. She goes down. She tells like her story to the police, and you know, we can piece it together. It seems very clear that Susan understands that there's a very high likelihood, especially because she's white and the person she shot is Black, that she's able to defend herself with this stand your ground law. That this stand your ground policy that's in effect in Florida. Because when you look at the stats, you know, I think shootings went up by like 700 individuals, like deadly shootings went up by 700 individuals every year. And a large percentage of those that were successful, that the people did not go to jail for shooting and killing people, were when white people shot Black people. And we hear this, you know, we hear stories like this every now and again where, you know, someone rings the doorbell to pick someone up at the wrong house and ends up getting shot. Some fucking crazy white person comes to the front door with a rifle, just like not even asking, not even just the presence of a Black person they don't know on their property, and you know, results in that Black person's death. And this was different because this was a Black person she did know. This was a Black person that she had constantly gotten in altercations with, and it just really escalated. And thankfully, the the police were actually like pretty on her from the beginning of this detainment. They were like, it did take them a while to finally like charge her with, what did they charge her with? I forgot what they ended up, manslaughter maybe. But she ended up getting 25 years. But the mom did not make it. The mom didn't make it. And you see the footage of the kid's father, who was separated from the mother, but shows up to the scene, thankfully, to break the news to the 4 children that the mom didn't make it. And all over, children playing too loudly outside. And Susan's story is crazy because she did call the cops first before she got her gun. She called the cops first, like she had so many other times before. And when she's being interviewed, they're like, yo, how long after you called us? Like, we were on our way. Why did you get a gun to defend yourself? We were on our way already. And she was like, well, it was maybe like 10 minutes after. And then, of course, they have timestamps for all this. So they look at the timestamps, and it was about 2 minutes after she called that she went, got her gun, shot through the door. And so, her story about it escalating, her fearing for her life, she's saying that the woman was, pounding on the door so aggressively that she thought she was going to break down the door and kill her. Like, I don't believe any of this. I don't believe any of this at all. Like, maybe she would, if she stepped outside, she would have gotten an ass whooping. Well deserved. But it's just a real food for thought on the stand your ground law and how it is yet this other additional piece of law in our country that is really doing a disservice to Black people and further creating this racial tension between Black people and white people. And I'm so thankful that Susan did get, she was found guilty, but that does not bring this, young mother and just young woman with so much life ahead of her, regardless of being, it would have been equally as sad if she was just a person who got her life cut short. That's messed up. But these kids do feel so guilty. And thankfully they showed footage of her like memorial service, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, God bless. He did speak, and I thought he really spoke so much to the boys, about not feeling guilty and about saying, like, don't feel guilty about your tablet. Don't feel guilty that your mom went to, stand up for you. That is what mothers do. And, continue living she did that so that you could live the freest life that you possibly can, like the life that you deserve. I'm paraphrasing here, but I thought he framed it so beautifully, and hopefully gave them some healing so that they're not living with regret or guilt that they obviously shouldn't be living with, when this is a woman who you just could tell she was like, she was like not going to stop until something bad happened to these families, to these kids. And I guess the police didn't do what she wanted, so she took matters into her own hands. So that is our enemy of the state this week. And all right, let's get right into some SCOTUS rulings, right? I promised you a bunch of SCOTUS rulings. So here are the ones that we were waiting on. So the Supreme Court did strike down Trump's birthright citizenship order. Okay, awesome. Mike, if you have anything to chime in with, please do that. We were just waiting on Mike getting a microphone. So he has a microphone now. And two, Supreme Court did uphold state bans on transgender athletes in girls and women's sports. 3, SCOTUS strikes down coordinated party spending caps, a major campaign finance ruling loosening restrictions on how parties can spend with candidates. I'm going to go back to that one later because I think that one is a little more underreported than the other ones, because the other ones are like some, I don't want to say that they're like just more fall under like these social type issues that we like to talk about, these human rights issues. And so I haven't seen as much chatter about the party spending caps, but I think
because who do you think they're spending the money with?
What do you, the people who you would talk about it? Yeah. But I did see it like a lot on like, my mom was watching like Rachel Maddow and similar type shows while I'm here. And I never watch news on TV, but because I'm here with her, I have been watching news on TV. And I pulled an article from the Washington Post about that because I do think this is actually a pretty big deal. And especially for people who are, interested in running or someone like me, obviously, who's very concerned with corruption going on inside of politics, not just as a constituent, but as someone who ran. I think this is a real big problem, and I think we need to be louder about it. For SCOTUS rule, geofence warrants are a Fourth Amendment search. Will require police to get warrants for bulk location data, though sent back to lower court on reasonableness. So that's these are things like that. As technology advances, we're going to have new rulings on all this kind of thing, big brother tracking type stuff. SCOTUS expanded presidential power to fire independent agency heads, but let federal Governor Lisa Cook stay in her post pending her separate legal challenge. And then also they upheld mail-in ballot grace periods. They declined Trump's appeal of the 5 million E.G. Carroll verdict. They denied Dershowitz's defamation appeal against CNN, and they agreed to hear an Arizona proof of citizenship voting case next term. And so, the one that I picked out to talk about a little bit more was this Washington Post campaign finance article. And again, this is from the Washington Post, and this is by Julian Mark and Clara Ence Morse. And it says Supreme Court sides with GOP, loosens campaign spending rules. And now there's just always, I was dealing with New York State, right? And so the campaign finance board was developed in New York State in the 70s. It started under Ed Koch, but then got more intricate in more recent years. Like pretty recently, they did some stuff on it. So you really do have to have a ton of documentation if you're running for something in New York State. And I think that is or maybe it's only city, but for any of the municipal roles in New York City for sure. And I think it's good. It was a huge pain in the ass as a candidate running because the documentation we had to have was absolutely insane. The filing took forever. I was working on, that up through this year with the treasurer. But there's a lot of argument that the candidate with the most money wins the race. And I don't think that's, it's not always true, obviously, but visibility, name recognition, just getting the name out there, as we've talked about with the primaries a couple of weeks ago, is like the first most major hurdle. And so it is very important that, I think that we can't just max out. You want to control, not just having the richest people also have the power in the form of being elected officials. So it says the decision is the latest in which the Supreme Court has weighed in on campaign finance rules. The Supreme Court on Tuesday sided with congressional Republicans in further loosening campaign finance limits, a decision likely to upend how political parties funnel millions of dollars into TV ads in the upcoming midterm elections. And they're doing everything they can because they know they are not positioned well going into the midterms as Republicans. In a 6-3 decision that split along ideological lines, the majority found that limits on how much political parties can spend in coordination with candidates violated parties' constitutional free speech rights. That's interesting. The decision is the latest in recent years to strike down provisions meant to restrict money in politics. Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh, writing for the majority, emphasized that the court's decision today treats all political parties equally, including the Democratic and Republican national committees. It will allow all political parties, including the DNC and RNC, and respective Senate and House campaign committees, as well as other parties and party committees, to participate more freely and compete more fully in the political process and to coordinate more closely with their candidates, Kavanaugh wrote. In the near term, the ruling could favor Republicans who have stockpiled over $125 million more than Democrats in their party committees ahead of the November midterms, the Washington Post has reported. The top Republican committees ended May with $256 million in the bank with no debt. Top Democratic committees ended the month with $127 million in the bank with $18 million in debt. The decision allows the parties to spend as much as they want from those coffers in coordination with candidates, making the fundraising gap more pronounced. Parties can now funnel money into campaigns, which are legally entitled to lower rates for TV and radio ads. Outside groups, by comparison, are not allowed to coordinate with campaigns and have to pay more for ads. In a dissent, Justice Lena Kagan warned that the ruling could lead to corruption. The majority invalidates Congress's restriction of coordinated expenditures, thus enabling a party to serve as an alternative checking account for a campaign, Kagan wrote. As a result, a donor will be able to give a party as much as $500,000 as compared to the $7,000 he can give directly to the candidate to cover the candidate's bills, and the candidate can seek just such a donation. So the court ushers back in the same opportunities for quid pro quo corruption that the contribution limits were meant to check, she added. Kagan was joined in the dissent by Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson. The decision could also give more power back to national political parties relative to outside groups such as super PACs. The court's ruling is the latest this term that could affect the midterms. In April, the court's conservative majority weakened Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which we've talked about a lot on here, touching off a scramble among some states to redraw their congressional maps to deliver seats to Republicans. The court on Monday rejected a Republican bid to limit mail-in balloting, keeping in place voting procedures in several states. Vice President J.D. Vance and congressional Republicans had asked the court to remove limits on how much parties can spend in coordination with federal candidates on items such as TV ads and campaign expenses. They argued the existing limits hinder the parties' free speech rights and put parties in a weaker position than outside groups. That is just, I kind of squawked at it earlier, and I just the reasoning that is somehow hindering free speech that's some flawed logic, in my opinion. The Democratic Party opposed that bid, arguing that lifting limits on party spending would lead to a greater potential for quid pro quo corruption, allowing wealthy donors to dodge individual contribution limits by donating through parties instead. The ruling overturns a 2001 precedent referred to as Colorado II, which found that the Constitution allowed limits on coordinated spending by parties to stop donors from getting around contribution limits. Kavanaugh wrote that the earlier decision's reasoning has become outdated, especially in the face of newer controls such as disclosure laws. Importantly, disclosure does not stand on its own, Kavanaugh wrote. Rather, the combination of the base contribution limits plus the earmarking rules plus the disclosure requirements together serve the government's anti-circumvention interests here without unduly restricting core political party speech. While Tuesday's decision means that parties can spend unlimited amounts on candidates, there are still limits on how much individuals can donate. Individuals can give $3,500 per election to a candidate, but are able to give $44,300 per year to a national party committee, which is chump change for many of these multimillionaires and billionaires. And this is why people like Elon Musk can almost, from their own bank account, control like an entire election. By contrast, super PACs can accept unlimited amounts from individuals. Super PACs are still restricted in how they coordinate with candidates. I don't think that this opinion makes a mostly deregulated campaign finance system worse. In some ways, it might make it better. And just the fact that we're calling it a mostly deregulated campaign finance system, put a pin on that. In some ways, it might make it better if one believes that parties are more responsible political actors than fly-by-night super PACs. Rick Hasen, a law professor at the University of California at Los Angeles, wrote Tuesday in Election Law blog, but super PACs won't go away. Over the past 2 decades, the Supreme Court has gradually loosened campaign finance regulations. The court, led by Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr., has been especially receptive to arguments that restrictions violate constitutional free speech rights. In the 2010 Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission decision, the court ruled that corporations and other outside groups can spend unlimited amounts on candidates. 4 years later, the court lifted the cap on how much wealthy donors can give to federal candidates, political parties, and committees. So I guess just more motivation to make more money and then, do good with it, hopefully, right? Republicans applauded Tuesday's decision. This is a decisive First Amendment victory and a major win for the integrity of our political system, Senator Tim Scott, Republican, South Carolina, who chairs the National Republican Senatorial Committee, and Representative Richard Hudson, Republican, North Carolina, chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee, said in a statement. The Supreme Court made clear that the federal government has no authority to place arbitrary limits on how political parties support the candidates that they nominate. Democrats said that the decision would benefit the rich. Oh, thank Democrats coming through, dropping the knowledge. Thank you so much, Democrats, for saying that. No one could have seen that coming. Today's ruling is a win for billionaire donors and special interests who want more influence over the GOP agenda and an invitation for corruption. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Democrat, New York, who serves as chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, said in a statement. She was joined by fellow Democrats, Representative Susan Delbene from Washington and DNC Chair Ken Martin. They added Republicans, no voters will hold them accountable in November. So again, I thought that was very interesting, and probably the SCOTUS ruling that I think will really, really affect us and many of these issues, because obviously who gets elected controls has a lot of influence over these issues, and just was not being talked about the way I thought it was going to be or should be talked about. All right, so let's go on to the Wacko mailbag, and let's talk about things that we love and hate about America, by you, the people, the constituents. And I can't verify, I didn't go to everyone's profile to verify that these people were all American. I know a lot of them just by names because they're people who comment a lot are Americans, but I did ask, please, only Americans respond to this. Yes, Mike?
Just real quick, I'm really happy about the birthright citizenship thing being shut down.
Well, yes, that was horrific.
Yeah, no, I feel like that is the first step towards social credit scores and the whole nine. Plus, we don't have the best player on the U.S. men's World Cup team.
Yeah, and that's
birthright citizenship.
And that was really the most important thing.
I mean, from where I'm sitting, kind of.
You know what? Sports has done a good job of bringing New York together this year. So if it can bring the rest of the country together and have us make more positive outcomes as far as Supreme Court decisions, whatever works at this point, I'm on board. So yeah, these are responses by you and people who follow me, people who watch the show, Wackos. And Mike, if you want to think about your favorite and least favorite thing about America while I'm reading these, I would love to hear from you. And they are organized into kind of different categories. So I'm going to start with best things about America, according to Americans. A lot of nature and geography came out. So I know who said everyone was going to take too long to read. So just know that I did give you credit on my docket, but I'm just going to do this as kind of a fast list. So people said national parks and public lands, diverse natural landscapes and ecosystems, legit beautiful country. National and state parks, cool landscapes, preserved nature. National parks, again, cultural and ethnic diversity and access to good food because of it. The nature and the variety of good food available, breathtaking beauty of the land, geographical and topographical ranges, beaches, mountains, tropical, desert, etc. I also like that someone who listens to the show used the word topography, which I haven't heard since social studies class. So good on you. Public parks and public libraries, epic. America's natural beauty and our cultural diversity within our country. Someone says Chili's Grill and Bar and nature. I also love Chili's. Shout out. Unlimited chips and salsa. I love that. The best crispy fried chips ever. And then we moved on to rights and freedoms. People are saying the best thing is the First Amendment. A lot of First Amendment, freedom of speech. Someone says freedom of speech is both the best and the worst thing. Freedom of speech can scream about how I hate the president in broad daylight. Being able to say I hate the president, being able to complain about this government and not fear reprisal, being able to oppose Trump mostly without fearing for my life, my right to vote. We all have the right to disagree. The freedoms our country was founded on, separation of church and state. That's a great one. The Constitution, women aren't second-class citizens. I mean, not on paper, but sometimes on paper. Then we move on to culture and community, the melting pot of cultures, food, music, clothes, culture, community, our optimism and belief that we can do anything. Coming here with nothing, you can still make a fortune and a career. Inevitable socioeconomic progression, one way or another. Someone said New York City. Hell yeah, Matthew. Thanksgiving. I hate seeing my family, but I love being able to laugh about it with friends later. Cultural diversity within our country. Food, products, miscellaneous. This is the beauty, the opportunity. Ranch, as in ranch dressing, which is so funny because because of the World Cup, people were like, please stop putting ranch in like your suitcase. Doritos, drunk debauchery, free refills. I do love free refills. Blue slush Alani. I got to try that. That sounds like something I would like. Alani is like the energy drink. Ketchup, Charmin Ultra, and Bounty. Someone said favorite is easily strong AC and ice. Yes. There's a lot of other countries like
that's European.
What?
There's no way that's not a European who wrote that. Strong AC and ice. That's the two things they don't have.
Well, I know, but the thing is, like, that's not even just Europe that they're like very anti-ice, meaning ice cubes, and strong air conditioner. I also had that same problem when I was in Israel on Birthright. Like there was, which I'm sure was completely deleted from, I'm sure if I ever run for office again, they'd be like, she went on Birthright. I was 27. I wanted a free trip. But yeah, no ice. And the cups were so tiny. And I'm like, we're in a fucking desert. Give me lemonade with ice, please. It was terrible, though. Someone said beer. Get that Euro trash out of here. That's funny because I know European beer is supposed to be better, but I also prefer American beer. Give me a Bud Light any day. Give me a Michelob Ultra. Big titty goth chicks. Someone just said unabashed. Was there supposed to be another word there? But I don't know. And then let's get to the worst things about America. Let's start it off with a lot of people mentioning healthcare, cost of healthcare situations and no maternal leave, no universal healthcare, the healthcare system and public transportation. Someone said most men and healthcare system. I think the men thing is a pretty, international problem, but I hear you. Lack of social programs, so much of the world has, healthcare, etc., parental leave, frequent mass shootings. Then we move on to Trump, MAGA, political, Donnie Dump and the MAGA era, everything Trump, MAGA stand for, MAGA, Trump and MAGA, Trump. That optimism can lead to Trump in office, uncertainty. And I'm going to push back on that because I don't think it was optimism that led to Trump in office. I think it was distrust in establishment politics and politicians and people not having money, not having opportunities, not being able to purchase homes and not like having a very uncertain future for their children. And even though I think the way that Trump being elected was not the proper solution, I think it was people hurting that made Trump win, not people thinking optimistically, honestly. Yes.
What
Mike?
do you call it other than like, hey, eggs aren't going to be $6 for a carton anymore? That's, you know what I mean? Like that
Right.
is the definition of like, hey, maybe it'll be better under this guy.
Yeah, but maybe it'll be better under this guy. To me, is like that's duress. That's not like to me. Barack Obama was optimism, and Donald Trump was like, "Let's fucking try this." That I read them very differently, having been around for both those. Those are two of the most vivid presidential elections in my lifetime. And I hear what you're saying, but and I also think when you frame it the way I framed it, it's like a lot. We don't have to be as mad at people who voted for Donald Trump. So I think it is actually to everyone who voted for Donald Trump's benefit. But I truly do feel that way, and that's why I try to maintain empathy. But it's like I just don't know how people's ears could be closed to a lot of the other hateful things that he said. But I'm interested. I mean, if you want to write me more freakazoid on the optimism, if you're someone who listens to this show, I'd be really interested to hear that framing. It's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. Someone says the uncertainty if we can still complain about government in 2 to 3 years as a nation, the slow degradation of our legal system and its weaponization, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the integration of church and state, the Supreme Court justices serve for life, freedom of speech, both the best and the worst, as we saw above. Then we go into gun violence, gun culture and car culture, gun violence, lack of social programs, gun violence, slavery and genocide. As someone says, ICE, systemic and social issues. Someone said ICE and housing, cost of living. The country is basically 4 corporations in a trench coat. That's a really funny way of putting it. I mean, not funny at all in reality, but funny way of wording it. How difficult it can be to find community outside of work, school, or church. No more policy regulation to protect the land. Overconsumption, suburban sprawl, the education system, the monopolization of youth sports, people. The IRS constantly needing to fight for freedom. And then some truly critical thoughts, people calling Thanksgiving Turkey Day. I love those because these are like funny ones, but I agree with that. I fucking hate when people call Thanksgiving Turkey Day. And then no more dollar menu at Taco Bell. And if that's not, if that's not a sign of what's happened to America, I don't know what is, sweet Benit. Mike, what are your best and worsts?
Well, I mean, I agree with the First Amendment, right? Like that is, I think that's like the way that we talk about our president openly, watching foreigners like looking over their shoulder, like, dog, are we okay? Like, is that, so
that was freedom of speech was also mine. I have some additional stuff on that, but yeah. And then you have no worst thing about America? That would be very you.
I mean, I don't know. Look, I like to be the change I'd like to see in the world. So, for me, as long as I'm raising my daughter right, there is no worst thing. I don't know. I mean, look, I think to be honest,
you don't think anything. So, I mean, but outside of your family unit, you don't have concerns of anything else bad happening in the country?
Well, I mean, just the fact that like I don't know, everything post Ronald Reagan to now has just been the corporatization of America, right down to the fact that like these prison corporations are suing the state for not providing them with enough prisoners. Like, what have we done to set up contracts to the point where, like, if we are not locking up our citizens and taking away their rights, then we're in breach of contract? Like, that should never exist. So I think like that, for me, like a for-profit prison system mixed with the corporatization of everything.
Okay, I like that answer. I like that. That's good. So my best thing about America was also freedom of speech, and that also, and this is very me, but it's really the only country where becoming famous in America many times means that you have achieved worldwide fame. And I said, sorry, other countries. It is the 4th of July weekend. We got to be obnoxious a little bit. And also every single comedian that I am friends with who came from another country, unfortunately, does agree with me. And I'm actually, so many people said, freedom of speech, including me. I have a little bit of an asterisk about this, and I'm going to get into in a moment, because it is a great thing, but there are other places that actually have it a little bit greater, which is alarming. And then my worst, and I was surprised someone said slavery, but no one said just plain racism, and that's clearly my thing is that we're the worst thing in America is racism, and racism in general, systemic racism, and that it exists still quite rampantly. Like racism is still quite rampant. It exists in our policy. It exists in our police system, and that it is the foundation, in part of the foundation of our country's establishment in many ways. And it's like it's that, and then how do we and can we get over that and get past that? Obviously, we have like made on paper progress over these past 250 years. I mean, some achievements better than others, but the stench of it is still so palpable, and I wonder what we can do to solve that. That bothers me a lot. And so when I was thinking about that, I actually started doing a little bit of research about slavery and, when America was founded, what was the actual discussion, just as a refresher. And so historically, slavery as an institution shows up in essentially every civilization. Like I'm talking about like Mesopotamia. It shows up in or around 1750 BCE with the Code of Hammurabi. Like it's ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, African kingdoms, the Islamic world, indigenous societies that were in the Americas before the Europeans arrived. And so slavery has been something that existed. Humans, treating other humans as property, that has existed since before recorded history. But what not Mighty Ducks Top, but what has not always existed is specifically race-based slavery, and that's what makes the slavery in America a bit different. My research went on to say what made the transatlantic system different was that it became explicitly race-based and hereditary in a way many earlier forms weren't. Portugal started shipping enslaved Africans to its Atlantic colonies in the 1440s, and Spain followed quickly into the Caribbean and Florida. Let's see. And when we were, putting together the Declaration of Independence, it said the Declaration of Independence's original draft by Thomas Jefferson did include a passage condemning the slave trade, and it ended up being cut out largely under pressure from Georgia and South Carolina delegates, plus New England merchants who profited from the slave trade too. Then, at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, slavery was one of the most contentious issues. It produced direct compromise, the 3/5 compromise, which is, as we all know from school, that enslaved people counted as 3/5 of a person for representation and taxation purposes. The Fugitive Slave Clause, and a clause protecting the international slave trade from being banned until 1808, which Congress did ban effective January 1st, 1808, which was domestic slavery, and the internal trade continued. Quakers and some, which I would have been a Quaker back then, Quakers and some individual northern states were already abolishing slavery in the same period. We got Vermont in 1777, gradually in Pennsylvania starting in 1780, Massachusetts effectively by judicial ruling in 1783. It says historians and legal scholars disagree about how directly to draw the line from that founding era architecture to present day inequality. That's the substance of debates like the 1619 Project versus its critics. But the basic point that the country's founding documents and institutions were built with slavery accommodated into their design rather than resolved is not seriously disputed. Rather than this. So yeah, I mean, it made me feel, I guess, a little bit better that there were people like Thomas Jefferson being like, yo, this is bad news. But it's like, and I know that other places, when they, were in charge of the colonies before Europeans took over, or when the other countries that were in charge of the colonies, like Portugal, Spain, etc., like they were doing slave trade too. It's not like we invented slavery in America, but it certainly, like, making it so race-based, and then having the slaves freed, but still treating, Black people as second-class citizens in the country, even if it's not legally, like with little loopholes and just, again, like systemic racism. I was just trying to kind of look into, how did this happen? What's the root of this? Were people fighting against this then? And what can we do in the future to fix this? And then, as far as my best thing, again, I, like so many of you, did say the First Amendment. And when I was researching this, I learned about something that I didn't know previously, which is that The Economist has this democracy index, and all the countries get a rating on this democracy index. And there are 4 tiers that you can have as a country. You can be rated a full democracy. You can be rated a flawed democracy. You can be rated a hybrid regime, or you can be rated an authoritarian regime. And as of the most recent full ranking, only 25 countries, representing 6.6% of the world's population, have been rated as full democracies. And, spoiler alert, America isn't one of them. We lost our rating as a full democracy in 2016. And so it almost makes me feel like, it's like we have been pretty, hysterical, as we should have been, over the rights that have been taken away from us over the past, several years, since 2016. But to read this on paper, that we are not even ranked as the top tier in democracy, it really makes me think it's like we really shouldn't be so comfortable and so happy with our First Amendment rights, because to not be in that top tier is pretty crazy as America, like something kind of founded on such stuff. So this full democracy includes countries like Norway, New Zealand, Sweden, Iceland, Switzerland, Finland, Denmark, Ireland, Canada, Australia, Japan, Taiwan, Mauritius, and Uruguay, Costa Rica in Latin America. And the US is in that second tier. It's classified as a flawed democracy, one of 38% of the world's population living under that category, scoring particularly poor on political culture. Beyond that, almost 40% of the world's population live under authoritarian regimes, with another 16% living in hybrid regimes. So roughly 45% of humanity lives somewhere with real electoral accountability, full or flawed democracy combined, but the US isn't held up as the gold standard within that group. And so we're talking about free speech, right? So, speech law on paper says that the First Amendment really is, it's unusual, right? The US has no hate speech laws, no blasphemy laws. We have very strong protection for offensive and controversial speech. Most of Europe, Germany, France, UK criminalizes certain categories of speech, including Holocaust denial, hate speech, that would be fully protected in the US. In that narrow legal sense, the US is genuinely among the most permissive in the world, right? So if we just isolate specifically, First Amendment, but it can't really go beyond that as far as like democracy. So like free speech and the First Amendment, like, is unusual, is unique, but to then go on and like see that even with this unusual right that we have, that is really, really exciting, we still are this flawed democracy. Press freedom in practice right now, and this, with the freedom of the press, this is where stuff gets a lot worse in America in recent years. So Reporters Without Borders 2026 Index, which measures the actual on-the-ground environment for journalism, which includes legal harassment, government pressure, media ownership, journalist safety, has the U.S. ranking 64th globally in 2026, down from 17 when the index began in 2002, its lowest ever position. And we knew that was, we knew stuff like that was coming, right? The RSF points to Trump's litigation against news outlets, pressure on public broadcasters like NPR and PBS, and cuts to international broadcasters like Voice of America as key drivers. The U.S. now ranks below many Western European nations and several smaller democracies. Norway, Netherlands, and Estonia top that list. So when we talk about, the First Amendment now, it is almost like isolated to like us as individuals speaking rather than members of the press speaking. They don't have the same rights that they used to, and that happened pretty quickly. So, and then I did a little bit more research because this index was new to me, this Economist index, on how the index works and how the countries are scored and what's the methodology, and what are the tiers. And so the Economist Intelligence Unit scores 167 countries on a weighted average of 60 indicators grouped into 5 categories. So we have electoral process and pluralism. There's 12 indicators there. The functioning of the government, 14 indicators there. Political participation, 9 indicators there. Political culture, 8 indicators there. And civil liberties, 17 indicators there. Each country then gets a score from 0 to 10 in each category. And it's based mostly on expert assessment, and then they fill the rest in with public opinion survey information when that's available. And the 5 category scores are averaged into one overall score. That final number determines which of the 4 tiers a country lands in. And, when we're comparing a full democracy means you got a rating of between 8 and 10. And that means that civil liberties and political freedoms aren't just respected on paper, they're reinforced by a political culture that actually supports democratic norms. It requires functioning checks and balances, an independent judiciary whose rulings are actually enforced, government that functions adequately and diverse, independent media, and only limited problems overall. Whereas a flawed democracy means you score between 6 and 7.99. Elections are free and fair, and basic civil liberties are respected, but there are real problems elsewhere, which, include media freedom infringements, which we certainly have had here, minor suppression of political opposition and critics, and underdeveloped Alfred's coming to join us, political culture, low political participation, or governance dysfunction. Hi, Alfred, you're joining us. Hi, buddy. You can't go that way because you have a leash on, honey. Sit down, Angel. Okay. And then specifically, the U.S. Was downgraded from full democracy to flawed democracy in 2016. Its score crossed the threshold from 8.05 to 7.98 that year. And so it was already at the bottom, and then it just went a little bit lower. And it has stayed a flawed democracy every year since, including 2025, where it actually lost another 0.2 points. The EIU's own explanation at the time wasn't about any single event. It cited a longer erosion of Americans' trust in government institutions dating back to the late 1960s. So the flawed democracy classification isn't new, or exclusively a recent administration story, although 2016 is an interesting year. It's a downward trend, basically. So I think that's really important for us to keep in mind. Norway is number one out of any country anywhere, followed by New Zealand, Sweden, Iceland, Denmark. It's interesting to see Costa Rica on that list too. And then we love to see Japan. And again, it's funny because I think people think that, Japan in so many ways is so much more strict than America. And they are, but I think it's almost like Japan is really good about following the rules, and then and everyone just agreed, we're going to follow this set of rules as a community. And then the government is not going to have to be on our backs so much in many ways. And we ultimately are going to get more freedoms if we follow this simple set of rules. Again, my thoughts on Japan. I just think that truly, anyone who is leading, I think that you should, visit all these countries and kind of look at the legislation and policy that they have in these countries, but also, definitely go to Japan. But again, as we talked about after my trip to Japan, I think it's a lot easier for everyone to get along and to have less, infighting, because basically everyone in Japan is fucking Japanese. So the problems, the heavy racial problems and the unofficial caste system that we have in this country is just not happening at the same level. Obviously, you can still have a fiscal caste system in Japan, but there's just not the opportunity for as many different kinds of unofficial caste systems. All right, so I hope you guys learned a lot from that. We might just do a couple little stories, and then I have some history for you to end the show. Again, this is an unorthodox episode. I know a lot of people are on vacation this week. It's just a different kind of format if you're on the beach or something. Still kind of a heavy beach listen, but here we are. So let's go into the Wacko mailbag. Again, if you want to email me, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. This is from Wacko Jorge. And I had seen this on Instagram because I follow so many dog rescues, but he sent me an actual news article about it from NBC News. And it says, it's a Wacko mailbag /cuties corner, but at least 117 dead dogs found in search at California Animal Rescue accused of abuse, officials say. The Humboldt County Sheriff described the search area as a horrific scene that won't be forgotten by those who were on the site. This is by Doha Madani. California authorities unearthed at least 117 dogs in various states of decomposition on Friday, many of which appeared to have been killed by gunfire as part of an ongoing investigation into an animal rescue organization. The bodies were discovered during a search of Miranda's rescue in Fortuna, the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office said. Officials had been granted a warrant that included excavation of the property for evidence that dogs had been buried in mass graves. The 117 sets of canine remains were found mostly intact at 2 sites, the sheriff's office said. Nearly 24 skulls, hundreds of bones, and 600 dog collars were also recovered. Jesus, this is a dog Holocaust museum. Sheriff William Hansall thanked the law enforcement teams and forensic veterinarians who assisted in the recovery. He said in a statement that the investigation is just getting started. The determination of all these professionals showed while working through this horrific scene is something we will not forget, Hansall said. NBC News was not able to reach Shannon Miranda, the founder of Miranda's Rescue, by phone Sunday. Miranda did not immediately respond to an email requesting comment. Miranda is going to need to go into the witness protection program if Miranda doesn't end up in prison for the rest of her life, because Miranda is going to be wanted by everyone in the United States of America. The sheriff's office said in a news release last week that it had been contacted in April about allegations of fraud, animal abuse, and animal cruelty at the rescue, and that the case had been assigned to the Major Crimes Division. An initial search warrant was executed May 1st when officials seized evidence. Investigators also determined that a significant number of animals that had been surrendered to the rescue were not accounted for. A second search warrant executed Thursday led to the recovery of the canine remains. Forensic veterinarians were able to examine 71 of the bodies on site Thursday, but did not have time to reach the remaining 46. A preliminary examination, including x-rays of the remains, found that many of those animals showed evidence of bullet fragments. Investigators are working to identify dogs that were microchipped. Other remains were found in advanced stages of decomposition and were deemed too severely deteriorated to be removed from their burial site, the sheriff's office said. The investigation is expected to be lengthy, the sheriff's office cautioned in a statement. The Humboldt County Sheriff's Office understands the public's desire for accountability and justice, it said. However, it is our responsibility to conduct a complete, impartial, and legally sound investigation while ensuring the constitutional and legal rights of everyone involved are protected throughout the process. No charges were announced. Miranda posted a statement June 18th addressing, quote, recent media coverage and online commentary. And again, I had seen this popping up and a lot of comments, because again, I have a very dog rescue heavy algorithm. So this is crazy. And I had seen mutterings of 117 dead dogs. And there was also a lot of heat on this one specific man who apparently does day-to-day operations there. But this is really, really crazy. Addressing recent media coverage and online commentary on the rescue's website. The statement described 2 incidents that had drawn particular attention, both involving animals that were killed at the facility. The first involved a dog that killed another animal and attacked a third. The second involved a dog that lunged at a stroller carrying a baby, according to the statement. These were not decisions made lightly and were based on my responsibility to protect both the public and the animals in our care, Miranda wrote. The statement also described Miranda's rescue as a no-kill shelter, that's why people were really flipping out, because this was on and because of that, this article doesn't go over it, but a lot of people were saying this is an organization that gets money from the government. The statement also described Miranda's rescue as a no-kill shelter, meaning animals are not euthanized simply to free up space, but Miranda acknowledged that euthanasia is sometimes necessary. That is not unique to Miranda's rescue, I will say. No-kill shelter doesn't mean that the dog that you leave there won't be euthanized. And I think a lot of times people feel comfort if for some reason they have to give up their animal. A lot of times it's when humans are experiencing homelessness or are in and out of the shelter system, in and out of government housing. A lot of those housing, government-based housing don't allow animals, right? And that's something that, our elected officials really need to change laws around that, because it's emotionally taxing to the human beings that are already going through obviously a rough time. It's certainly very difficult for the animals. A lot of times those animals will end up euthanized. And then furthermore, all these animals are, I don't want to say clogging up, but they're creating to the overcrowding that we have in the shelter system in America, which is a very, very serious problem. And it's also leading to, if it's not leading to the death of that particular animal, it's certainly leading to the death of other animals, older animals, senior dogs, any dogs with disabilities, black dogs, like those are all dogs, and then, specific breeds like, pit bulls and stuff. Those are all the kinds of dogs that are, heavily euthanized. And so again, if you're obviously adopt, don't shop, but even, furthermore, if you are able to adopt a senior dog, a breed like a pit bull, a dog with a disability or some kind of a medical issue, like a dog with diabetes or something, or a black dog, those are all, dogs that are high risk of being euthanized if you actually want to make sure that you're saving a life. The article goes on to say, whenever euthanasia has been necessary, I have notified local authorities in advance, even when that reporting is not required. Miranda wrote, I believe it is important to maintain a clear record of these difficult decisions. Oh, okay. So sorry. And then it has a correction at the end of it that says a previous version of this article referred to Shannon Miranda by the wrong gender. He is a man. Okay. This makes sense because I was like, all the coverage that I saw online was a man. And I was like, well, I guess there's another man who's in charge of day-to-day activities, but no, Shannon Miranda is a man with 2 female names. So that's, I guess that's why he had to kill 117 dogs by hand to let everyone know that even though his name is Shannon Miranda, he is in fact a man. That update was just added at the end of the article. All right, cool. So thank you, Jorge, for sending that in. Grisly news, but again, I think it's always good to have conversations about what's really going on in the shelter system. If you have to give up your animal for any reason, definitely, if you can rehome it by yourself, your dog obviously has a probably much better future in store, rather than just like giving it to the rescue or the ASPCA or any of these organizations. And then also, while we're talking about animals, obviously 4th of July, America 250 Baby is coming up. Please do not bring your dogs to firework displays. So many dogs get startled, run away, become lost. Sometimes especially older dogs end up having a heart attack. I know you don't think about that, but like a dog can have a heart attack from fear. So like, I know you think your dog's enjoying the fireworks. They're not. Just leave them inside, put them in a comfy room, put them in the laundry room, put them in the bathroom, put them in like a safe room, put on some piano music. They have a puppy playlist on Spotify. Now that Spotify stopped running ICE ads, I guess we can listen to them again. And some comfy blankets, some safe toys, a bowl of water, and you go enjoy the 4th of July. Your dog doesn't need to be present for it. All right, moving on. Just going to put in a couple of girls here. We had the primary in Colorado that we were waiting to hear about with Melat Kiros in Colorado. That was the one that I had talked about. That was the DSA candidate outside of New York that I was most interested to see if she would take the race. And she did end up winning her primary. She won her primary. I was watching those results come in live. This is from NPR. Democratic Socialist Melat Kiros poised to become the first Gen Z woman in Congress. Political newcomer and Democratic Socialist Melat Kiros is poised to become the first Gen Z woman elected to Congress after defeating 15-term incumbent Democrat Diana DeGette in a primary race for Colorado's 1st congressional district, according to a race call by the Associated Press. The win in the solidly blue district that makes up most of Denver means that Kiros, a 29-year-old PhD student and lawyer, is all but likely headed to Washington, D.C. Next year. She would replace DeGette, 68, who has held office since 1997, the same year Kiros was born. It's an upset that comes amid a broader intra-party fight taking place among Democrats as prominent incumbents face pressure to pass the baton to a slate of more left-leaning and younger candidates pledging to reject longtime political norms and practices. Kiros, an Ethiopian immigrant, is part of that movement backing economic populist policies, including universal health care and childcare. And this is not surprising when we just did that, on the ground without a country survey ourselves. What was was the number one thing people were complaining about. It was time off. It was, and it was healthcare. Overwhelmingly, the public, the non-public service that people are most upset with is, healthcare and our lack of universal healthcare and the confusing health insurance system. Obviously, free Luigi, right? That's why that was as popular as it was. And then, also DSA candidates are into more politically polarizing issues like abolishing immigration and customs enforcement and ending U.S. military aid to Israel. She also, and it's the article calling it more polarizing, not me calling it more polarizing. She also swore off money from corporate PACs and pro-Israel lobbying groups and heavily criticized the Get's history of accepting campaign donations from defense contractors, as well as energy and pharmaceutical companies, as she should. Whether or not you shouldn't be doing that, you don't have to be DSA to not do those things. I wouldn't be running as the DSA, but I also wouldn't be doing those things. Denver voters of all ages, of all races, of all religions sent a clear message. We will not wait, Kiros said in her victory speech. She added, Denver, the future is being written right now. Nothing is set in stone. We won tonight, but this is about something so much bigger than this moment, than one moment. This is a movement, and we are just getting started. Nothing the DSA loves saying more than this is a movement. That's literally their favorite thing to say. DeGette defended her tenure on the campaign trail, emphasizing her progressive record on issues like healthcare and climate policy. And I do want to point that out because that's a conversation that a lot of the people, the political commentators were having, was that the problem really wasn't like DeGette's policies, because she did a couple of things people were unhappy about, but over the course of her political tenure, they were things that until very recently were political norms, and that doesn't make them okay. But she was doing what her similar other Democrats were doing. But overall, her policy was very was pretty progressive, and I think it was more of like, you've served for decades at this point. You're 68. It's time to just usher in some new blood, and these things that were acceptable for most of your tenure are not acceptable now, and we need to start changing with the times, right? So DeGette defended her tenure on the campaign trail, emphasizing her progressive record on issues like healthcare and climate policy. Kiros's victory in Colorado marks another massive win for the Democratic Socialists of America, coming just a week after the two, it goes into New York, and all the other victories. Let's go ahead. If she's successful in November, Kiros would join a small but likely growing cohort of Democratic Socialists in Congress. Currently, just two sitting House members, AOC and Rashida Tlaib, describe themselves as Democratic Socialists. Kiros would also become just the second Gen Z to serve in the House, joining Florida Democrat Maxwell Frost, 29, who was elected in 2022. In an interview with NPR in February, Kiros argued that many of the policies core to her campaign have a unique pull with younger voters. Young people understand that we are in the fight of our lives, she said. We need to have leaders that are going to be fighting for the kind of bold policies that actually get something done, and they're refusing to settle or wait for a turn or ask for permission. And so again, just as it's been, interesting to watch Zohran Mamdani in New York, as mayor, in the city of New York, he, has a good amount of pull, not a ton. There's still a lot of decisions that he has to make with Kathy Hochul, but I think, Kathy Hochul, up for re-election, saw how much New York and the world loves Zohran Mamdani, and then obviously was like, I want to be reelected. I'm going to go along with this guy. This guy, is the future. And even if the rest of the establishment Democrats don't go along with him, I kind of got to go along with him for some stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to be ousted. And I'm sure she doesn't want that to happen. But it's going to be interesting to see, as these candidates, these DSA winners, head into Congress, if they are able to have the same impact when there are so few of them still. And if they are bold and communicative and really get things done, or if they end up not really being able to achieve anything, because again, they're outnumbered, and like, I'm just interested to see how that is. And if they don't get done, the things that they promised to get done, or if they stray from any of the promises they've made, is the DSA then going to run like a DSA member against another DSA member? Because the DSA has already done something very unique in that it is very comfortable running candidates against Democratic incumbents, which was something that the party for a long time didn't do. Nancy Pelosi, has famously said many times, like, we do not challenge incumbents in the Democratic Party. And the DSA said, oh, actually, we do. That being said, I do, even though the DSA candidates are running on the Democratic line because they have to win, and they're trying, and they have a tactic here, I think, where they're trying to, basically overpower the Democratic Party and become them, and then, make it the Socialist Party. I still do think they are, a separate party with separate ideas, and ultimately that's, I think, what they're pretty clearly headed towards. And there's another article that I saw from Axios that kind of talks about just that thing, this war establishment Democrats versus DSA candidates. And this is from Axios by Andrew Solender. And it says, House Dem centrists plot Mamdani caucus counterattack. Moderate House Democrats are warning they're prepared for war if incoming progressives and Democratic socialists try to hijack the House floor to secure ideological concessions. Why it matters, this strategy would mean even more work for House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to tamp down divisions and keep his caucus unified come 2027. Despite being generally more closely aligned with Jeffries than the progressive wing, these centrists say they cannot allow their party to be dragged to the left without a fight. Clearly, there has to be organization. One centrist House Democrat told Axios, you can't just wring your hands on this stuff. There's going to be a war, a second centrist lawmaker said, calling the incoming leftist members bomb throwers, not problem solvers. And that's interesting because we don't know yet, right? They certainly have been bomb throwers. I mean, I hope they're not using that like that they just mean like they're I'm like, that's not Islamophobic, is it? I never know with these fucking centrists. Like they just mean like they're throwing a bomb like to change the state of establishment Democrat. I hope they half the time like they will slip in like Islamophobic things and I don't even catch them because they're so crazy Islamophobic. And then I'm like, I can't actually believe you said that. So I'm just like always like not just worried about that. But I think they just mean like throwing a bomb at an issue. I hope. State of play, the New York congressional primaries on Tuesday were a wake-up call for many Democrats on Capitol Hill. And like these successes are big, but like plenty of incumbent establishment Democrats also maintain their seats. So this is, obviously that's not a very interesting story though, because that's usually what happens, right? And so we talk about Daria-Liza Avila Chevalier, who I'm very interested to see how she turns out. I also had a meeting in the past week, and I don't know if I have done a show since I had this meeting, but basically, wasn't off the record, but I'm not going to say who said it, obviously, but I had a meeting with someone who was very involved in politics, deeply involved in politics, in New York City politics. And that person referred to Daria-Liza Chevalier and Clara Valdez as bottom of the barrel picks for the DSA to run. And he was like, it's crazy that these two people, and it's not anyone I've talked about on the show before, so please don't make any guesses at who it is. I've never said this person's name on the show before. I know it's a pretty new person in my world. And he said, yeah, these are bottom of the barrel DSA candidates. And he was like, I can't believe this is who they decided to run. And I can't even believe that they won. So that is so interesting. So if these are considered like bottom of the barrel people, like as far as who the DSA has to offer, I'm really interested to see how this pans out. Again, I think Clara Valdez could do all right. Daria-Liza is she's a loose cannon, and hey, respect. It takes one to know one. I think a lot of people also see me as a loose cannon, but I really, really am interested to see how she fares because I don't think it's going to be good. I think Claire Valdez can do it, and Brad Lander, he'll be fine. Brad Lander, first of all, annihilated Dan Goldman, and second of all, he'll do a great job because even though he has like kind of the energy of an establishment politician. But I think, losing to Zoran Mamdani, I think has really woken him up in some ways and probably pushed him further to the left, and is it because he believes those things or because he wants to, I think he's pretty leftist, but I think he also like wants to win and is listening to the people and wants to, stay an elected official. And so he is actually going to listen to his constituents and, there we go. And that trio joins over half a dozen other left-wing candidates who have won primaries this year and another half dozen vying to unseat more moderate Democratic incumbents. and we're going to see how that's going. Let's see what they're saying. What you're seeing in these elections across the country is voters who are saying, I am sick and tired of your loyalty to the establishment, Progressive Representative Delia Ramirez, a Democrat from Illinois, said in an interview. And what we're hearing, moderate Democrats say that they are prepared to use their own large numbers to enact the same strategy. All right, well, then do it. The intrigue, some Democratic centrists are also floating, breaking a potential logjam by doing what their moderate GOP counterparts have done repeatedly under Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican Louisiana, which is signing onto discharge petitions. The margins may force bipartisanship. You already see what's happening on the floor with discharge petitions. Said a third Democrat centrist told Axios. The lawmaker argued that rather than fight this strategy, leadership would go along with it. Negotiating with these guys on the left never works out well because they'll never be satisfied. So that's a little update there. And then Mike, did you have, and then we found representative from New Jersey, Republican Representative Tom Kean. We were looking for him. Where was he? It turns out he's just a sad boy. He had been checked into a hospital for depression, which is quite ironic because he signed so many pieces of legislation, not giving people days off for various reasons. So, he's now going on a little apology, mental health awareness tour where he's like, I'm so glad I had access, to take care of my mental health when I needed to, yet he doesn't do the same for his constituents. So fuck you, Tom Kean. I'm glad that you didn't kill yourself, but maybe, the sadness and despair that you were in, maybe you could have like a real come to Jesus moment. And, hopefully, in the coming weeks, maybe you could think about how lovely it was to get care when you needed it and give that care to your constituents. And Mike, did you want to talk about the DHS game show? I know that was.
No, I mean, it was just something I was actively horrified by.
Well, yeah, it's one of these headlines that we've seen under this administration that feels like a joke, but it's very much not a joke. And so what Mike and I were talking about, you might have seen it online, but New York Times also did a piece on it. It's a reality show where immigrants compete for U.S. citizenship. DHS is considering it. And again, this is one of those things that obviously it made it to New York Times because it's so horrifying. But it's it says a spokeswoman for the Department of Homeland Security said the agency was happy to review, quote, out of the box pitches. Mike, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're doing that poorly at trying to if it's costing too much money to be able to deport all these people to the point where you now need to start a reality show and sell advertising on it.
Right. And we knew it was gonna be expensive. Like if anyone had listened to any of the Democrats crunching numbers, we knew this was expensive.
Right. And then on top of that, the amount of just the amount of pressure from Trump donors, whether it be the hotel industry or the farming, go down the list of the people who donated to Trump and then see how many of those people actively profit off of illegal immigrant labor. So it's okay, well, we're obviously not going to affect those industries because those are the industries that are giving money to Trump. So none of this really makes any sense. And doing having to resort to now doing a reality show feels like cruel and unusual punishment.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the article literally starts out and says the Department of Homeland Security is considering taking part in a television show that would have immigrants go through a series of challenges to get American citizenship, officials said on Friday. And it was the Department of Homeland. Yeah.
Can we have some fun though? Let's do a little bit of
what are the challenges?
Yeah. You gotta, as a team, you have to eat more hot dogs in 5 minutes than Joey Chestnut.
That's so funny. I have never been to that. And I was thinking of going. I was like, what can I do to celebrate America 250? Should I go to the Nathan's hot dog eating contest? I feel like
get rid of the time limit and see if he could hit all 250.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think the hot dog eating contest very American. I think perhaps coming up with a way to lose weight without doing any exercise or changing your diet at all, like an additional one. I think that's very American. I think figuring out a new way to earn money without having any, like, who can earn the most money without using any skill, knowledge, or talent. So kind of like a new TikTok dance trend.
Oh, I was going to say just build a crypto coin.
Build a crypto coin.
I think he'd be into that.
Yeah. Find a way to sell a dilapidated piece of real estate to a poor person of color for the maximum profit margin.
Huckleberry pie. Sorry, I'm just reading the Tex Kebs Neon Budweiser signs. This is what's coming in from the chat here. I'm trying to think. Okay.
They have to. They're, as a team, they're sitting at desks and they get real. They get real claims from Americans who need health insurance, and they have to figure out the most creative way to deny it.
Ooh, I like that. That's
a good
fun.
one.
That's very America.
That's very America.
Can we give them guns? This feels like
we just give them. What are they doing with them?
Whatever, dude. Get creative, freestyle, be American with it. That's what we do with our guns.
Gun freestyle.
Yeah, gun freestyle. I like it. Ray Gun will hop in on that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We give you a scenario. You tell, it's like a word problem, but it's a gun scenario. We give you a scenario and you let us know. This is kind of inspired by The Perfect Neighbor, how you could kill this person and legally get away with it. What state would you need to be in? Kind of a state challenge, since we're big into state rights now.
I like that. Yeah. It's like, that's
fun.
Your state's rights test, right?
Yeah.
You shoot your unarmed neighbor who is trying to get back her son's property.
Right.
In which state will you not face any jail time? And then,
there you go.
I like it.
That's good.
This is good citizenship testing.
This really is. And the craziest thing is they're
like, who needs to know about Alexander Hamilton? Really? This is the kind of stuff that's going to make you a productive citizen.
Alexander Hamilton. I think this is so interesting because the craziest part of this article is that, like, these aren't government officials who are thinking of these. The DHS is accepting, like, entertainment style pitches from producers. This was an idea from an actual producer, a guy named Rob Wersoff. He said the pitch generally was a celebration of being an American and what a privilege it is to be able to be a citizen of the United States of America. And Mr. Wersoff is a 49-year-old Canadian American, and he said he first thought of the idea during his own naturalization process. He said that immigrants in the show would compete in challenges in various states. He said one challenge would be highlighting NASA in Texas or Florida and seeing which immigrant could assemble and launch a rocket first. Do they not understand you need, like, do they mean like a little kid rocket or like an actual rocket that you would need like years and years of training?
Yeah.
There would also be trivia or civic challenges. The show would end with someone being sworn in as a U.S. citizen.
Well, the good news is when you build the rocket in, record time, you will still be deported, but then you'll be eligible for an H-1B visa, making hundreds of thousands of dollars at SpaceX.
Oh my God.
The true American dream. The
true American dream. All right, let's close out the show with some unknown American history. Again, I went online, I was like looking for specifically, I wanted like things that are lesser known moments in American history. And I mean, some of the things I was getting were things that I hope you know about, like the Tulsa Race Massacre. But as a refresher, this is 1921. White mobs systemically destroyed the prosperous Black community of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, known as Black Wall Street. Hundreds were killed, thousands displaced, and 35 city blocks completely destroyed. Aircrafts were even used to drop incendiary bombs on the district, making it one of the first aerial bombings on American soil. It was buried from official records for nearly a century. I feel like these are the bad moments. We'll end up with the good ones.
They did a
Mhm.
great job. Like Watchmen, the HBO show,
Uh-huh.
that did, like, I think the opening scene of that is like the Tulsa race massacre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, because I was like, I really hope that people know about that one. And then this is one I got, and I hope you know about, but I would be less, surprised if you didn't. The Tuskegee syphilis study. The U.S. government enrolled roughly. This is in 1932 through 1972, which again, like 1972, was not that long ago. The U.S. government enrolled roughly 600 Black men in a study on syphilis, faking treatments for most of them, and simply documenting how the disease progressed for 40 years. It's a foundational reason for medical distrust in Black communities that persists today. And we saw the repercussions of this with the COVID vaccine. It was a big talking point online. A lot of Black Americans have a real distrust in the medical system because of shit like this. That was not that long ago, right? Not that
So some good things might have come out of it.
Oh God. Okay, sorry, I forgot we have Mike on the line.
I don't like that I took it.
All right. Well, maybe that's why. Wait. Oh, what's the thing that you have? You want to talk about that? That was going to be another news story, but we're moving past it.
No.
So 3 Native American boarding schools. Native American children were forcibly taken from their families and sent to church-run boarding schools to eliminate their culture. Children were beaten for speaking their own language. Many were killed by disease, abuse, neglect. Remains of hundreds of children were only recently discovered. I think we have talked about that on the show before. Then we have the CIA Project MK Ultra from 1950 to 1970. The CIA ran a covert mind control program administering LSD to people without their consent. Who's the head of that? Ari Shafir. Some victims were permanently psychologically scarred. Records were deliberately destroyed, but declassified documents in the 1970s revealed the extent of these violations. 5 CIA-backed coups of democratically elected leaders. Throughout the Cold War, the CIA orchestrated coups to overthrow democratically elected leaders in favor of dictators friendly to American foreign policy, including Iran in 1953. Guatemala in 1954, and Chile in 1973. These actions led to decades of dictatorship, torture, and civil war. 6, the Sand Creek Massacre from 1864. In 1864, Colorado U.S. Volunteer Cavalry launched a surprise attack on a peaceful encampment of Cheyenne and Arapaho people, killing around 150, mostly women and children, despite prior assurances of safety. 7, the reverse Underground Railroad, free Black people kidnapped into slavery. So before the Civil War, free African Americans in the North were regularly kidnapped and sold back into slavery in the South. A clandestine network emerged to help rescue them, a shadow system that rarely gets taught alongside the Underground Railroad itself. Yeah, because it's not as much of a feel-good story. 8, the doctors' riot and body snatching from Black cemeteries. This is 1788. In New York City, medical students were stealing corpses for dissection, primarily targeting a Black cemetery. Even when a group of freedmen petitioned the city council for help, their plea was ignored. The practice continued until public outrage finally boiled over into the riots. And again, the sources for this is like all over the internet. Many articles went into putting these lists together. 9, the Philippine-American War, 1899 to 1902. This conflict rarely gets taught about because it exposes American imperialism and directly contradicts the nation's anti-colonial origin story. American atrocities committed there complicate the narrative of the U.S. as a liberating force. And closing it out, Edith Wilson's shadow presidency. Like, this isn't as like, this is more just kind of like, ooh, did you know this? It's not like really super bad, but it is like, it is under the, file it under distrust of elected officials and the government, right? So Edith Wilson, who is Woodrow Wilson's wife, the shadow presidency from 1919 to 1921. And it's funny because as a kid, whenever I had to do a report on a president, I always picked Woodrow Wilson. And I didn't know about this. After President Woodrow Wilson suffered a severe stroke, his wife Edith essentially ran the executive branch, analyzing every message delivered to him, barring officials from bringing him business and influencing domestic and international policy. She was accused of running the country and denied it until her death in 1961. Not evil, but it's corrupt as hell, and not something that we're getting taught in class very much. And then let's end with 10 lesser known good moments in American
Wait.
history. Yes.
I mean, it's crazy to put the CIA-backed coups of democratically elected leaders, including Iran, Guatemala, and Chile, and not include Hillary Clinton getting Muammar Gaddafi sodomized to death in the streets for the crime of trying to have a free Africa.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna have to fact check the sodomized to death, but that is and that's yours, so we'll do 11. Wait, what if I Google sodomized to death?
Her actual quote was, "We came, we saw, he died."
Wow.
It's a famous Hillary quote.
Is it? So I mean, it's the killing of Muammar Gaddafi, former leader of Libya, was killed. Is that what we're talking about? Yes.
Yeah.
In a firefight when loyals dragging it out of a drainage. Okay, so the NTC initially claimed Gaddafi succumbed to injuries sustained in a firefight when loyalist forces attempted to free him, although a video of his last moments show rebel fighters dragging Gaddafi out of a drainage pipe, beating him, and one of them sodomizing him with a bayonet before he was shot several times. So there you go. Okay. So,
the good news is now there's open air slave markets in Libya. So we brought freedom.
Oh, Jesus. Is that what? I gotta, you just,
up. I mean, again.
No, I know. I'm like, I'm trying to wrap up the episode and you're bringing wild things into, wait.
We're talking about the worst things we've done. I think that might be up there.
Listen, I didn't say this was, okay. I said this was like 10 bad things. It wasn't the 10 worst things.
I know.
Air slave market. I mean, the things that I have to search when I'm working with you are actually crazy. So reports from, this is from like NPR and 4 other sources, reports from international organizations and investigative journalists have documented the existence of open air slave auctions and severe migrant exploitation in Libya. The crisis primarily impacts vulnerable sub-Saharan African migrants and refugees attempting to travel through Libya to reach Europe. All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Those were both, you know what? You presented 2 crazy things today and they were both true. I'm really proud of you. America too. And historically accurate. I mean,
do.
Yeah. All right. So 10, these are 10 good moments that, we don't talk about enough. And then I know, and some of them that, were categorized on this list, cause I did have Claude help me organize. Don't kill me. I think this was a good usage of it for information. Mike was like, why is this on the good list? And I was like, ask Claude. All right. So the Oneida Nation saved the Continental Army at Valley Forge in 1778. During the Revolutionary War, the Oneida people walked hundreds of miles from upstate New York to relieve the starving army at Valley Forge. They carried hundreds of bushels of corn and taught the soldiers how to prepare it. Washington's own army likely would have collapsed without them, and then he turned around and burned their villages after war. There you go. 2, Henrietta Wood won the largest slavery reparations judgment in U.S. history in 1876. And I like how even in these good things we're like, something good happened because something really, 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 really bad happened before. But okay, America. A Black woman named Henrietta Wood, who had been kidnapped out of freedom and re-enslaved, sued her captor and won $2,500 in damages, equivalent to roughly $60,000 today. It remains the largest sum ever awarded by a U.S. court in restitution for slavery. The story was buried by the Jim Crow era. 3, 90,000 Chinese immigrants committed mass civil disobedience. This is 1892. After the Geary Act required Chinese immigrants to register with the government or face deportation, nearly 90,000 simply refused. The U.S. didn't have the money or manpower to deport them, grinding immigration enforcement to a halt. One of the most successful acts of mass civil disobedience in American history, almost entirely forgotten. And this is interesting because, obviously, like this is 1892, but today it's 2026. We're talking about mass hunger strikes at Delaney Hall. Like, things change, but things also don't change that much, for better or for worse. 4, Virginia planter Robert Carter III quietly freed 500 enslaved people, 1791. One of the wealthiest men in Virginia, Robert Carter III, freed over 500 enslaved people, the largest known private emancipation in American history before the Civil War. He did it without fanfare. He didn't Instagram story it, mandated his grave be left unmarked, and was almost entirely forgotten, while contemporaries like Jefferson and Madison, who freed no one, became legends. Isn't that always the way? 5, Virginia Hall, the most dangerous Allied spy of World War II. This is the 1940s. An American woman named Virginia Hall operated undercover in Nazi-occupied France with a prosthetic leg she nicknamed Cuthbert. She recruited resistance fighters, organized jailbreaks, derailed trains, and detonated bridges. She and her team killed 150 Nazis and captured hundreds more. The Gestapo called her the most dangerous Allied agent in France. 6th, the Tuskegee Airmen's first aerial victory, 1943. The Tuskegee Airmen, the first Black military aviators in U.S. history, claimed their first aerial victory over North Africa in 1943, defying both enemy forces and the deep racism within their own armed forces. Their symbolic impact on future civil rights progress is enormous and often underplayed, and very interesting because it's Tuskegee on the best list, and Tuskegee on the worst list. So really, just a place where there's a lot of American history going on. 7, the Boston Public Library, the first free lending library in the world, 1854. And that's fun because I know one of you listed free public libraries as one of the things you love most about America. And God, do I love a library. As the country's first large free municipal library, the Boston Public Library democratized information. And it's so important when you think about that. That's what they democratize information by making books available to anyone. And I think sometimes, do you really think of that when you go into a library anymore? That's why libraries are so powerful, because it's democratization of information. And that's what, to a certain extent, the internet does too, although there's plenty of misinformation that's being democratized there as well. And was the first library to actually let people take books home. Which sounds like not a big deal now, but at the time, this was a radical idea. Elizabeth Zane's, this is number 8, Elizabeth Zane's gunpowder run, 1782, during a siege of Fort Henry in 1782. With the fort's gunpowder nearly exhausted, 16-year-old Elizabeth Zane volunteered to retrieve a keg from a house 60 yards away in full view of enemy fighters. She walked out, retrieved it, and carried it back in her arms while being watched. She was wearing a pussy hat. The men inside were stunned. Girl power. 9, the state of Franklin, America's forgotten 14th state, 1784 to 1788. In the 1780s, settlers in what is now eastern Tennessee declared independence from North Carolina and formed their own state called Franklin. It functioned as a de facto independent republic for several years before ultimately rejoining North Carolina, a completely forgotten chapter of early American self-determination. And number 10, the first American in space. And this to me is probably the most American thing on the list. The first American in space was a squirrel monkey named Miss Baker, 1959. Before Alan Shepard and John Glenn, a squirrel monkey named Miss Baker and her companion Abel became the first Americans to fly in space and return safely to Earth, which is important because we love also sending animals to space and then they never return. On May 28th, 1959, testing whether living organisms could survive at high speeds and in microgravity, Miss Baker lived to age 27 and got fan mail until the day she died. What a country we live in. God bless America, or whatever you believe in. God, bless America. Spice Girls, bless America. America 250. Thank you so much for being here, for spending your time, for I think, if you listen to the show, for having faith in America even when it disappoints you. And I know everyone who listens to the show there is an American. I know there's many people who aren't American, but I hope that you keep in mind, if you're not American, that 250, we're a very, very new country and we are still going through growing pains. And I think the concept of the country at its core is really great. And hopefully, with all these new, young, motivated people who are running for office and winning these elections, we can really see change and progress and get back on course as a country. I do believe with us, believe in us. Maybe it all started with the Knicks winning the championship. I don't know. Although I'm devastated that my favorite player, Mitchell Robinson, is going to the Celtics, which is worst case scenario. That's, if you're like, oh, what's wrong with the Celtics? If you're a Knicks fan, the Celtics is the number one on the list of enemies. It's just, I don't make the rules. I just follow them, But anyway, thank you so much. Please have a safe, happy 4th of July. And if you were kind of like feeling weird about celebrating the 4th of July, celebrate the fact that, right now that you are alive during this time and you have some ability, just like the young man I wrote about starting the Facebook group, where he was helping people upload videos of the cops in Brazil exploiting poor people. Like if a teenager can do that and really make social change, you have a lot of ability to make social change. And I think even though it's disheartening that we are now a flawed democracy in America, it's also inspiring because it means, oh, wow, there's a lot of room for improvement and we all can contribute to that improvement and get America back on course. And I have full faith that we can do it. And I think that, if you're still interested enough in America becoming what I think it can be, that's why you're someone who listens to this show. Gash, the poster just came in today. So tickets will be on sale soon for, again, Gash in Los Angeles. Very American of me to go right into a plug. But Los Angeles Gash, the 8th edition of it, happening at the Comedy Store Sunday, October 25th. I'm already ready for Halloween, obviously. Prepare for those tickets. And also heads up, if you are interested in seeing Christina Hutchinson's show before it heads to Edinburgh in Scotland. Most of us won't be in Scotland. I'll be in Scotland, but a lot of us won't be. She is doing the first public read through of that on Thursday, July 16th at Caveat. So buy tickets to that. I'll be there. It'll be my first time seeing it live and we can enjoy it together. I'm really excited. She's been working so hard on that. So I'm excited to see that. And Mike, what can we see from you?
All right. So coming up, I have a very busy July 23rd. The Armored League is going to be back at Melrose Ballroom. I'm going to be on the commentary with my hetero life mate, Chris Vega. Come and get tickets. And the week before, I got Anxiety Attack, New York Comedy Club on Thursday, July 16th. Get tickets at NewYorkComedyClub.com.
Guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful America 250. If you do anything interesting, please send me what you did and commentary on America or any interesting American stories that may happen to you this weekend. Hopefully nothing involving having fireworks blow off your finger. Send it to withoutaCountrypodcast@gmail.com. I love you so much. Oh, and sorry, this show is a different format today. So thank you, especially to our Patreon subscribers. All hail to our amazing dictator, Christopher Fungi, to my capitalist pigs and my cuties. If you want to be one of these people, the Patreon supporting the show, you can head over to patreon.com/withoutaCountry. All hail Christopher Fungi. Have a very happy America 250, Christopher. And thank you for supporting the show. Thank you to everyone. Love you so much. The truth is in there. Bye.
Running from the man, yeah, the madman's coming, yeah, the man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive.